Richards trying to scoot in there alone. It pinballs to the crease. Score!
Let's get it.
Oh my God! Here we go.
You're listening to the Untitled Bullies podcast with your hosts, Derek.
How you gonna get it, Bobby?
John. Matt Casey.
Unnecessary, but totally necessary.
And Cody.
What's not to love?
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Pod Street Bullies. My name is Derek, and we are Johnless. Let's all celebrate, crack open a cold one. Let's have a good time tonight. But
cheers.
We are in the presence of the two finest Matts that I know. Hoagie, what's up, man?
Don't ask everybody that because lately I'm not. But what's going on, boys?
Matt, not everyone's cup of tea, Hoagie. And Matt Casey.
I'm doing well. I haven't pissed off the rest of Flyers Twitter, so I'm looking like the good Matt right now.
To be fair, you're not as active as the rest of us, but regardless,
yeah, I'm more on the sidelines.
Yeah.
I'm not really an active participant in the Twitter wars, but I'll be damned if Hoagie doesn't tell me about him.
He just keeps his eye on Orange.
There you go. Let me ask you guys a question. We're obviously in like the doldrums of sports calendar, not just hockey, but like, I can't watch a baseball game on TV, for the life of me. Like, what do you guys actually watch now? Because I'm going somewhere with this because I'm like really pissed off about something. But what do you guys actually watch instead of sports these days?
Lately I've been watching a lot of golf because that's just
okay.
Something to pass time. Did watch the Victoria's Secret documentary. That was wild. If you want to give that one, if you want to get pissed off about something.
I'm a big wrestling guy, so like Mondays, Tuesdays,
you got it all
Wednesdays. Yeah, like I don't know. I'm a dork. I love it though.
So last night, my brother and sister-in-law have been touting. It's an older now. It's 4 years old, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. They were like, "Hey, you got to go watch this movie. It's so good." And Brad Pitt, Leo, like even as a straight male, I'm watching the hell out of that and like being like, "Oh, this is great." I watched that movie and it's like 2.5 hours long, and I was like, "What the hell is this piece of crap?" Like it was horrible. And like so, last night I was like 10:30 at night, and I was just like, God, I miss sports right now. This is insanity. I can't watch that. I just spent 2.5 hours for that. A cool dog fight at the end. Like, come on. So anyway, that was my rant.
I've been trying to sit through O's games, and it's been so long since I've followed the Orioles like I used to. So it's tough to get back into it, and especially tough considering they're at a stage which, like, I didn't think was possible, but like a worse stage than the Flyers are at right now. Like they're just selling off everyone. Like they're going to probably trade Mancini at the deadline. Their entire bullpen's up for grabs, apparently. Like
so they're going full Blackhawks on that. Yeah.
Essentially. But it's been like that ever since they dealt Machado a few years back. Like it's tough to get invested when I don't know half the people on the damn team. Like
Right.
Yeah. But regardless, I'll sit and watch some of the games, and I'm like, oh, cool. They went on like a 10-game win streak while I was on vacation. I'm like, that's awesome.
Right.
First time above 500 since 1997. Like, but yeah.
Speaking of trying to get above 500,
try to get above water. The plan for tonight, what we want to do is obviously with things settling down a little bit in terms of the free agency market. I want to talk about how the Metro's gotten, how they've improved, how they've gotten worse, what teams to look out for, who's making jumps, who's falling down the rankings here. So we obviously know about Philadelphia's offseason. It's bad. Bringing back Justin Braun, signing Cooper Merity, Nick Delorier as well, which if you guys aren't aware listening right now, High and Wide, Flyers High and Wide has him on. They are live currently. If you are not catching this right now, Go check those guys out here after you do listen to us, because that's bound to be a fantastic interview. But a very underwhelming offseason, to say the least, correct?
Yeah, underwhelming is a fair way to put it. And like the fact that we're hoping our biggest offseason additions are off of our existing IR is not a great sign. But hey, I think we've beaten that horse to a bloody pulp at this point. And as we said in our group chat, I don't know how many more episodes I can like really go that much more negative. Like we need to find something else to grapple onto and maybe maybe ride this thing out. But I know we have some other stuff to talk about tonight.
Yeah, like negativity is one thing. Like I was pretty negative last week, but like it's not like I'm on here every single week.
Like, it's warranted. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's like get your spiel out. You know, I got mine out last week, and now it's kind of just therapeutic. You know, we're just gonna have our fun.
I swear to God, the best sponsorship, like for all of Flyers podcast, would be BetterHelp, like the online mental servicing, like because everybody needs it. We're all in a dark place right now. But you know what? Let's go. The only thing I will say is that I just got done watching the news. It's like, oh, monkeypox, forest fires, a shooting in Dallas. It's like, can we get a freaking break here? Come on.
There's no reprieve.
All Sorvino dies, like another member of Goodfellas dies. Like, what is happening today?
Oh yeah. Vince McMahon steps down from WWE because of some pretty shady stuff, which, hey, awesome. I'm in favor of it. But regardless,
All right.
Let's get down to the reason why we started this podcast in the first place, and that's to talk about how the Metro is going to shape up. We're going to go alphabetically, essentially, here, starting with Carolina, their additions, their subtractions. Hoagie, you put all this together, so I'm going to rely on you to go through the main points here. Let's talk about how they look. Let's talk about the new additions, and let's see where they fall in the end-of-season Metro rankings.
Sure. So they started off bringing in some pretty big names that were surprising to most. You got Pacioretty, Brent Burns, Andre Kasha, and Dylan Coughlin, I think that's how you say that one. And then they lost, Tony D'Angelo. We signed him to 5 years, $5.5 million, something like that. They have Nino Niederreiter, who signed with Nashville. Max Domi decided to leave, going to Chicago, and then Brendan Smith going to Jersey. I think they're making out pretty well, if not par, or getting a little bit better than that. With the addition of Pacioretty and Burns, they pretty much shored up the D'Angelo and Niederreiter absences right there. So I think they're looking real good right there.
You bring in a lot of veterans to help with a somewhat young team, if you will. Burns has been in this league for quite some time. Pacioretty has been in this league quite some time. They can both still produce if Burns can stay healthy. Bringing in a guy like Kasha, who's not necessarily a veteran on the terms of like a Burns or Pacioretty, but has been around for a while. He adds some speed to the lineup. You lose D'Angelo. Okay. It sucks. 60 points.
Huge loss.
Yeah, huge loss in terms
Big win
of
for
us.
Philly.
Yeah, absolutely. Niederreiter, I think, is going to hurt a little bit. Domi kind of stinks. I felt like Domi never really found his groove in Carolina, though. So, more luck to him in Chicago. And then Brandon Smith.
I feel like Domi's having a hard time finding a home regardless. He's just bounced.
Because he was in Montreal first? Was that right?
I thought Arizona drafted him first.
They did. And
Montreal, and then he went to
Columbus.
Like
the Bruins, or no.
Like he's just bounced.
I feel like he's the kind of player that I do think brings like something, a little bit of like grittiness, not like his old man, but a bit of like his grittiness and something to the lineup. I think he's a guy that a lot of teams would honestly like to have. And he's going to Chicago now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah, have fun. That looks like a great situation.
Yeah.
I'll say this, that like I think the reductions. I mean, this is a pretty big turnover in roster. This is a 20% flip over in roster from guys in and guys out. I think Pacioretty and Burns are good. They're obviously veterans. You're just wondering. I haven't watched Pacioretty play all that much, or Burns for that matter. But you got to think that age hopefully is not going to catch up with them too much, or they won't be 17-minute a night guys or something like that. Burns might even be more than that, quite frankly. But
Sure.
I don't know. This is a pretty big wholesale, so you're kind of relying on Brindamore to make sure that the pieces are able to fit together, which I think we all have a hidden love for Brindamore given this Flyers pedigree.
Sure.
But this is a pretty big turnover, I think, for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, I think it's. I don't want to necessarily say necessary. Trying to avoid being redundant there, but I think that you needed a bit of a shakeup given their playoff performance, and hoping that you can get the right pieces to gel together all throughout this coming up season. You bring in a good mix of guys that Burns is a good guy, Pacioretty's a good guy, a guy that people can look up to in any case for that matter. You get rid of a guy like D'Angelo who, you want to say whether he was a problem or not, it doesn't matter. I think that altogether we're looking at a top 3 Metro team no matter what. Pieces fit well, they play well. They're right back up top towards the top, I should say, of the Metro.
Yeah, I think Carolina was very impressive and very tough to play against, even though I think we randomly beat them once or twice actually, which I was like, oh, how did that shake out? But
I thought that about a lot of teams last year.
Yeah,
but they they're obviously a very soundly coached team, and I don't see anything in here that's like they have oh god, who's their star? Sebastian Aho.
Sebastian Aho. And,
I think he's I think Aho's a very solid player, and I think you're definitely building that forward group around him. So I don't know how Kasha or Coughlin are. I honestly don't know much about either of them. So
sure.
And Brendan Smith is Brendan Smith. Is he the guy who Big Sam took to the woodshed at some point?
That's Lemieux. Brendan Lemieux.
Oh, got it.
Yeah,
got it.
Either way, more would probably take Brendan Smith to the woodshed too. So could have, I should say,
with his wooden leg now.
Yeah. So Carolina's shaping up to be a pretty solid team once again. We move back down the list here. We come across Columbus, our dire enemy in the Johnny Gaudreau sweepstakes. Still bitter about it, but we're gonna let that pass. Hoagie, take it away.
Yeah, Columbus. I don't really even want to say his name, but Johnny Gaudreau, the big splash. And then you have Eric Branson, Mathieu Olivier, and I'm just adding in Patrick Laine because you have to. He re-signed. It's a big addition. They couldn't afford to lose him, especially with getting Johnny Hockey. And their big loss was Oliver Bjorkstrand, which was a surprise to many, but that was mainly just a cap shed at that point, so they could add in those types of guys. They're shaping up to look really good. They're really trying to go all offensive hockey right now with the addition of Gaudreau, keeping Laine. You still have Voracek to dish the puck, and I think Laine and Gaudreau will probably be slotted in with Roslovic, and that'll be a pretty interesting top line with some offensive firepower.
Sure. What do you think, Matt Casey?
Yeah, I think it's tough to look at this and not say they've improved. That's for sure. They're certainly going to make a often slumbered hockey town be pretty exciting. Again, I know they were back a couple of years ago when they beat Tampa Bay in the playoffs, but I don't know much about Gudbranson. How do you pronounce that?
Gudbranson. He's a defenseman, right?
Gudbranson, yeah.
Yeah. I think the question is they're obviously pumping a lot of money into forwards and very specifically into Laine and Gaudreau. What do they have enough of a middle six to sustain? And that I don't know. But when you go top heavy, there's a risk involved, and all it takes is an off night or a twisted knee, and all of a sudden you're in a lot of trouble. So
sure.
Look, do I wish that we had either one of them? Well, I don't really care for Laine all that much, but do we wish we had some more of the top end talent? Absolutely. But the reality is it's a four line game. I think Columbus has improved. I can't say with confidence that they're a playoff team, though.
Yeah, that's the one that gets me because I'm on the fence about that. I think they could certainly sneak into a wild card spot, but to me too, like I think overall we're looking at a Metropolitan division that's gotten somewhat weaker. And we'll get into that, and maybe I'm wrong there and I sound like a fool, but what's new? Columbus's biggest thing to me is that, you're looking at a goaltending situation that's very streaky. Merzlikins went on that run, I think it was 2 years ago now, where it's like how many consecutive shutouts or something like that, or how many consecutive periods of shutout hockey. Korpisalo, when he's good, he's good. When he's bad, he's bad. They signed him to a 1-year extension, like 1.3 mil. Great, awesome contract. I think he's a solid 1B or backup. How confident are you in that tandem, though, moving forward? So that's the big question. You can beef up your four lines, your forwards, all you want, but if you don't have anybody that can stop the puck, that's a big problem. So,
what do they have on D these days? I know they have what's his name?
Werenski.
Yeah.
They've got not Boqvist. Was he part of the Seth Jones deal?
I have no idea.
Boqvist, Adam Boqvist. I can't. This just goes to show how much I really follow other teams.
It's funny because it's almost like they're going the exact opposite strategy that the Flyers are going. They're going heavy top line. We're going heavy defense.
Sure.
And we're going heavy 7th, 8th defenseman. That's what we're going with. So it's just interesting to see the contrasting styles, and I don't know if either one of them is a great tactic, but you got to start somewhere. So
yeah, they've got. They've got Werenski, Goodbranson. They've got Gavrikov. Decent younger, 26. Boqvist, Jake Bean, Nick Blankenberg, Andrew Peak, and Gavin Bayreuther. So a couple guys that I'm not very familiar with, I'll be completely honest, but top four looks decent, not, mind-blowing, but decent.
And what did they lose in Bjorkstrand? I know everyone was sort of like, whoa, that's a big fish to give up there.
2 picks, right?
Yeah, I think the biggest part of that deal that people were like, wow, why did that happen? Because he's not, this incredibly high-end talent, but he's a very good forward. But they sold him off for a 3rd and 4th round pick. So I think that's where a lot of the reaction comes from.
But it's obviously the salary. Sometimes you just have to do it.
If you think about it, you can slot Gaudreau into that spot in the lineup, and boom, that's an upgrade.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So moving on down the line here, then we get to the New Jersey Devils, the team that constantly wins the offseason but can't win shit when it comes to the regular season.
I feel like they're not even winning the offseason anymore. Like nobody wants to go there.
They claim to win the offseason.
Yeah, there's plenty of banners.
UCF claims to win a national title. Yeah.
Right.
All right, Hoagie.
Yeah, they were very, very busy this offseason with they brought in Vitek Vanacek from Washington, Eric Hall from Boston, big splash with Andre Palat, signing him away from the Tampa Bay Lightning. You got John Marino from Pittsburgh and our boy Brendan Smith that we just talked about from Carolina. And then they lost Ty Smith and Pavel Zacha, which, I feel like they're doing pretty well with the additions of Eric Holla, Andre Palat, John Marino, the likes. I'm interested in the Vitek Vanacek kind of deal there. I guess they're on a run with what's his name, Blackwood and Vanacek. It's kind of interesting to me. So, they always claim that they're winning the offseason, but I really don't think these are the pieces to really push them to the next level. They're still really young, and they're not where they should be. So they got a lot to learn.
Vanacek, and this is just solely based on the time that I spent working news. We covered the Hershey Bears. He was with them for a long time within the Caps organization. He's a very good AHL goaltender. I thought he was a very good AHL goaltender. But when it came down to the NHL, I don't see him in any more than a role as a backup. So that move, it is indicative of, yes, we're going to stick with, Mackenzie Blackwood. He'll probably play backup depending on who else they have in the system. I don't know if they don't have Wedgwood anymore. There was another guy, I couldn't tell you. It was Zach Fucale, or was he's not with them anymore, is he?
Sounds familiar. I don't know.
I couldn't tell you. Either way, Blackwood's the guy, and yeah, he's better than Carter Hart. Just kidding. Yeah, any Jersey fans listening, you can suck it. But
might have 1 point actually watching.
Not a decent, not a terrible, I should say, not a terrible off season. Bringing in Palat, I think, is a good move. I think bringing in Halla too gives you a pretty solid 3C option. Mm-hmm. Marino, solid get. Their blue line looks all right. Losing Ty Smith, whatever. I don't. He's a former first round pick, but the Zaka thing I think is going to hurt, more than anything. But that's just comparing it to one other loss. I think he'll be successful up in Boston with the right guys. But hey, it remains to be seen. But they didn't win the offseason this year.
Right. Yeah, I think Palat is the one name that kind of jumped out at me as like, okay, that's a legit player. But then, he's 31, going to be 32. Fairly soon here. Actually, no, in March he'll be 32. There's definitely, he's an older guy. I think they can definitely use that because so much of the leadership on that team has been probably unfairly put on the very young budding stars on the Devils. And the reality is I think he can do a good job in there and really show them what it takes to win. Sure. The reality is, though, the Devils are still only going to go as far as that young crew. Who is it? It's Heischer and who are the other guys that they Hughes,
Jesper Bratt, who doesn't have a contract. He's an RFA, so that's another interesting situation to watch.
He's quick as hell. I like him.
I don't know if they're taking him to arbitration or not. I have to take a look. At this point, I think they have to, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think it's like the 27th or something like that. They have to, so it's 2 days away.
Wednesday.
So I don't know. The Plot one is an interesting one. I don't think it's a bad move. You just kind of wonder, is he going to be enough of the veteran presence to help kind of push these guys to the next level? Like, I still can't confidently say they're going to be a wild card team or a playoff team. It's tough to say that they'd be worse than last year, but you never know.
Yeah. I mean, personally,
about the Flyers.
That's true. Personally, I've got them finishing 7th in the Metro. It's going to be neck and neck though with Philly. So, yeah. Moving on right down the line here, we get to the Islanders, team that we all hate, John especially. Very, very quiet off season so far. So take it away.
There's another Sebastian Aho? What?
You didn't know that?
No. So the Islanders, Lou Lamoriello is legitimately just running it back.
It's your favorite phrase, isn't it?
Right now it is.
I hear that from you at least 3 times daily.
Probably. But with the Islanders, it's true. They made one trade for Alexander Romanov from Montreal. He still hasn't signed, so who knows what's going on with that. And then they brought Philadelphia Flyers legend Andy Andrioff back.
There's a familiar name.
And then, Sebastian Aho. No, not the one from Carolina, but the other one.
V2.
How pissed would they be if, like, hey, we got Aho at an extreme
Oh, I'd like to give Lou the benefit of the doubt there.
I'm sure.
And they lost no one?
Not that I could really find, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah. What'd they give up in that trade? Was it just picks? Something like that? I couldn't tell you.
I think it may have just been picks. Let me look it up real quick.
Yeah. Either way, if they lost anything, it's very minimal here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think this is going to be the ultimate case study in coaching effectiveness. They have the same roster as the control, and they've adjusted the coach as the variable in this whole scenario, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I think the Islanders were a very solid team when we faced them, and somehow took them to 7 in the bubble, and I think they were solid the year after that. Obviously losing to Tampa both times, I think. But like that
so,
may
yeah.
have been their window.
Right.
And so you got to just wonder, is running it back, in some ways it's great that they're showing faith in this roster, because on paper, I still think it's a decent roster. But we'll just see the Trotz factor and see how much of a thing that really is.
Absolutely.
So they
Go ahead,
traded
Lee.
him with a 4th for the Islanders' first-round pick in 2022,
There
the
it is.
13th overall.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of a splash.
Yeah. That's Casey brought up a great point. This is going to be an interesting way to see just the impact that Trotz had on that team. New coach, almost same exact lineup. It's going to be very interesting to see how that turns out in terms of what Trotz's style looks like versus who's in there now. So I've got him finishing, I think, like 6th. I'm not expecting much from him.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be shocked if they finished above, Washington in terms of where they're at. But, remains to be seen. That's why the game's played.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things to keep in mind with the Islanders, and, as Flyers fans, we certainly had our share of excuses with injuries and COVID and all that sort of stuff. The Islanders arguably had a worse hand than we did last year. They didn't have they were on like a 10-game road trip to start the season, then got just pummeled by COVID and had their lineup just decimated. And so it wasn't until like game 30 that they actually had like a real roster in there. And so like all this saying that like maybe Lou put a lot and the coaching staff put a lot of stock into the fact that they do think they had a good team, but they just had like unforeseen circumstances that never ever happened to them. And so again, I think it's going to be the test case to see if this roster fits or not.
Sure.
I can't wait for next offseason where Casey gives Arizona the benefit of the doubt because they're on like a 12-game road trip to begin the season, even without a freaking arena to play in.
Like their best player, Shane Gostisbehere, was injured.
Well, it's not good when you have to split ice time with the Pee Wee B team.
Oh, good Lord. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Think
When
about
Arizona
that.
State club gets priority over Arizona.
Like, bro, we were here first. Find your own rink.
Right.
Like, how do you come back from that? Oh. All right. Down on the list here to the Rangers, the other New York team. My pick, honestly, to win the Metro. What other team's going to take it from them here? So, Hoagie, talk about the additions and losses here.
Yeah, they kind of made a big splash during the offseason. They signed Yaroslav Halak, pretty much going to be their backup at this point to Shesterkin. Went out and signed the big name Vincent Trocheck to replace Andrew Kopp, who they lost, and brought in Louis Domingue, which was a surprise. I think he's just going to be playing in the AHL for him.
Probably.
They lost our boy, Norris winning trophy, Justin Braun, right back to Philly. Gotta love it. Andrew Kopp signed with Detroit. Georgiev went to Colorado, which was a surprise to see. And Patrick Nemeth left, and Ryan Strome decided not to tender his rights, which was a big surprise.
That was kind of shocking to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought he's a pretty big piece of that roster. So, but I mean, Trocheck, that helps replace Andrew Kopp's productivity, and he's a goal scorer. I'm excited to see what he can do with Savannah Jad and Panarin up there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. What do you think?
How is Nemeth? Was Nemeth any good? I don't recognize him all that much.
I think he's a young kid that
Really?
they really couldn't find a spot for.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. It's tough to say if they got better or not. I would argue that one of the top 2 teams in the Metro. I don't think there's anything. I'm not shy in saying that. I don't know if this version of the lineup puts them above, puts them into the Stanley Cup or anything like that. But the Rangers are good, and Shesterkin is a freaking beast.
Right.
And it's tough to really poke holes in the lineup of, a team that, that took Carolina to the woodshed basically. And took Tampa to 6 or 7, and Tampa pulled some magic, but they're doing it well, and it's tough to say. Again, I don't know if they've gotten better, but I don't think they've gotten worse. I will say that.
Yep.
I think it's an interesting move replacing Georgiev with Halak. You got 2 goalies who are right around the same age, so I'm sure Georgiev wants an opportunity to shine, which can't blame him, obviously. Domingue, again, that's probably a move for Hartford. You've got Trocheck, which is a fantastic get on their end, because you've got to replace the productivity from Strome, from Kopp. Losing Braun, no big deal. Nemeth too. I'm not gonna sit here.
No big deal to them.
No big deal to them, but again, big deal to us here.
One man's trash is another man's reward.
It's essentially losing pieces, but putting more pieces right on top, and just plugging and playing. So I think definitely top of the Metro. I can see them finishing up in first, but just goes to show their rebuild actually worked. Let's move on down to Pittsburgh, another team that everybody loves to hate. Arguably the most active in terms of bringing people in. Not so much people leaving,
right?
But take it away, Hoagie.
Man, was our boy Ronnie busy during this offseason. Re-signed Kasperi Kapanen, re-signed Richard Raquel, re-signed Malkin, re-signed Letang, brought in John Ruda, brought in Archibald, got Ryan Poling, Jeff Petrie, Ty Smith. Man, who didn't they get? It's kind of crazy, and all they gave up was Mike Matheson and John Marino. This team is just they didn't want to cut ties with their pieces in Malkin, Letang, and they're sticking around. I think keeping Richard Raquel around is huge for them, because that gives them another person to keep on sniping alongside Malkin. I really like Kasperi Kapanen. I really wish we had him on our lineup, but Ron took a blind eye and now has him with Pittsburgh. So no, I think they made their splashes and made it known that they're just going to keep rolling with their solid core and just keep on going.
Absolutely. Matt Casey.
I've just been waiting for this team to diminish, just have diminishing returns at some point. It's just not happening, and it's really, really frustrating. And so I'll say this, one more time, that is this the year that finally that core of Crosby, Letang, and Malkin isn't able to carry a team, or literally they make mediocre players very good players, in my opinion, which is the sign of that makes them great players, and so I'm just waiting for that shoe to drop, but I've been waiting for 4 years for that shoe to drop. But I'll say this too, is I don't think this is a real contending team either. I don't think they made a dramatic improvement to their lineup. It's tough to see them going any further than they did this past year. So
yeah, it's a status quo type of offseason for me with them. The Letang contract's going to hurt them eventually, just not next year. Same with Malkin. Letang's will probably hurt him sooner than Malkin's will. Right. Keeping Raquel, great move. Keeping Kapanen, great move. I'm not sure. I don't believe Evan Rodriguez is staying, or there's any intentions to keep him. I think he's outpriced himself from Pittsburgh, if I'm not mistaken. So, you lose Matheson, you lose Marino. I know they were high on Marino. He's a solid, young defenseman, but, they always find a way to have Joe Schmo down the street
Mm-hmm.
come in, play well, and then it's like, where did this guy come from?
Right.
So I can't discount that. I can't look at the Pens and say this team's going to be bad or this team's going to be, out of the playoffs. I've got them finishing up in third. Like I can't bet against them is essentially what I'm trying to say.
Do you see them? We'll get to this later. We'll do some comparisons later. Let's continue through the draft. Through the free.
I also think they brought back Casey DeSmith as their backup goaltender. Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Who's their starter again? I always forget. It's freaking name.
Jari.
Tristan Jari. Yeah. So they're going with that 1-2 punch of Jari and DeSmith. So they're just putting it all in again. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, for a team that has limited flexibility when it does come to the cap, considering the contracts that they do have,
right?
Hands are a bit tied there.
Mm-hmm. And they must be. They're right up against it, aren't they? They've
got to be.
I think they're past it. To be honest, I think they're
really?
Like $450,000 over when I was looking at cap friendly this afternoon.
They just assuming Malkin's going to be hurt again.
What's that?
They're just assuming Malkin's going to be hurt again for another 40 games.
Probably.
Malkin will find his Pittsburgh equivalent to the Ronaldo for a third-round pick trade. Just watch. Yeah.
I'll say this, though. And, yes, Pittsburgh has had notably better, better play from us for a decade now, ever since that 2012 amazing series where we beat them. But, the Flyers play Pittsburgh tough, even if there are, minor leaguers playing in the game. And I like the fact that regardless of who's on their roster, they still have these guys in there because it makes the rivalry that much cooler, in my opinion.
Sure.
And so, I don't know. I always look forward to the games. If you had to put, I don't like any of the teams we play in the Metro, particularly Columbus. I'm kind of like, whatever, Columbus. You are what you are. And kind of the same with Carolina, but you look at the Rangers, the Devils, and Pittsburgh specifically, it's not even close. I hate Pittsburgh, and I had to do Sophie's Choice with the Rangers and Pittsburgh series there, but I was like, I want the Rangers to win. I can't believe I'm saying this. I want the Rangers to actually win this.
Yeah, Rangers are slowly creeping up to that first spot for me, though. I've been to the game against the Rangers. I've watched them beat the Flyers, and the fans overtaking the Wells Fargo Center is one thing that sticks in my mind because growing up an O's fan, Camden Yards was always filled to the brim with Yankees fans, Red Sox fans. I hated it. I'm like, where's your fanhood? Where's your passion for the team that represents this city?
Right.
Come on. It's frustrating, but it just makes me think of all those terrible teams that I used to watch growing up,
Right.
Which here we are again. But promised I wasn't going to get it too negative tonight.
We're happy.
We're ecstatic for hockey. Last team we want to go over here, the Caps. Washington had a decent offseason. Again, back to my original point, I feel like the Metro got progressively worse. Not drastically, but just not what we're used to, I guess you could say. So, Hoagie, talk about the additions and the subtractions here.
Yeah, another team that was pretty active. They went out and got Dylan Strome, who's a free agent. Got our power play madness guy, Eric Gustafson. Went out and got Stanley Cup winning goaltender Darcy Kemper, which is huge. And went out and got Connor Brown, who I've heard a little bit about him. I don't know a lot. I just know he's a pretty exciting young player that can pretty much get slotted right into the lineup. They lost Vaitek Vanacek to the Devils. They lost Ilya Samsonov, which that 1-2 punch right there between the two goaltenders leaving was just eye-opening to me. I was like, where is this going? They lost Justin Schultz, and they just lost Michael Kempney as well. I think Kempney went to Seattle. I think Schultz may have went there as well. Yeah, both went to Seattle, and I think they just added somebody, but I forget their name. I just saw it. It just popped up on the Twitter feed not too long ago. But I mean, what can you say? They brought in the Stanley Cup winning goaltender with Darcy Kemper, who was playing with pretty much half an eye at one point, to replace their two goaltenders that weren't really doing much for them. They're a team that they're on the decline. Kind of just we've been waiting for the Penguins to do it. I think the Capitals are starting to kind of make that dip. They didn't really add much offensive power, and they're really, depending on Ovechkin, what is he, 38 years old or something like that? They have Ovechkin because that's a Oshie. Mantha's exciting for him, but they're really depending on some older guys to kind of keep them up in the Metropolitan. That they're really starting to hit that decline.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you. I put them in the same category as Pittsburgh, as kind of like a slowly fading. I don't think you can call them a dynasty, but slowly fading powerhouse, I guess you can call it. I still think they're going to be a decent team. I think they added. I mean, is Dylan Strome? I get my Stromes confused here.
Dylan Strome, yeah.
Is he decent, or is the other Strome a better Strome?
All the Stromes are alike,
aside from Matthew.
Terrible skaters, pretty good offensive upside, but that's about it.
Right. So I can
Strome. Where the hell is he?
He's playing for like the Reading Royals. Like he's not even making it.
So you talk about same kind of mentality as Columbus. Like they have 1-2 decent very good forward lines. And then I think it's a good opportunity for Kemper to come in and show that he wasn't a fluke. And that's got to be a hit to the ego a bit to win the Stanley Cup and then get booted out of the state. But I put them at a third playoff or wild card, quite frankly. I still think they'll make it, but I don't think they're going that far.
See, I've got them finished in behind Columbus in the division. Like for some reason, I just think Columbus could have a good year. Not necessarily an indictment on Washington, just Columbus surpassing them, but the addition of Dylan Strome, the addition of Darcy Kemper, Connor Brown. Not going to say much about Gustafson. We know how he did here in Philly. I wish nothing but the best for him. Hope he does well. Great guy.
Yeah,
another man's trash, another man's treasure.
the goalie thing threw me through a loop because they lost their 1A and their 1B, and then they bring in Darcy Kemper. So it's an interesting, to Matt Casey's point, a very interesting opportunity for Kemper because he gets the starter spot right away and gets to prove to the masses that this past year I should say, wasn't a fluke. So gonna be interested to see that. I mean, other than that, I don't have much to say about Washington. My dad's a Caps fan. I follow them vaguely, probably more so than a lot of the other teams, but we'll see how that goes. They're aging, so Father Time will catch up eventually, but when's that going to happen?
Right.
So running down the rankings here in terms of who you guys have, I know I touched on it mainly through when we did get in depth about the teams and the additions and everything, but who do you guys have? Let's just go top three. The rest fall into place. It is what it is, but top three in the Metro, Matt Casey.
I go Rangers 1, Canes 2. I go Washington 3.
Okay. What about you, Hoagie?
Ditto.
Oof. I got the top two, New York and Carolina, but I've got Pittsburgh at 3.
Yeah, I got Pittsburgh.
I think that's reasonable. Yeah.
So what makes you guys put what makes you guys put Washington in the 3 spot over teams like Pittsburgh, Columbus?
I personally think Washington still has a bit of a toughness and a chip on their shoulder factor that I just don't see from Pittsburgh. And I'm I guess I'm specifically talking about the Tom Wilson, factor that Washington has.
Sure.
And not to say he's a great player, but you know what? A lot of players play pretty damn well, with that guy backing them up. And so I don't see Pittsburgh as a tough team per se. I think there's skill on there, no doubt, but I think Washington's aging core is, as a whole, I think is going to be more productive than Pittsburgh's aging core.
Gotcha. Hoagie,
I could see it going the other way too. Like I'm not
Sure.
I'm not totally on it, but
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much just along the same lines. I think Washington just has a lot still to prove with Ovechkin and those types of players, and just seeing the Washington and the Pittsburgh always just battle out for that type of play. Pittsburgh, I think they just put all their money on those top two lines of Crosby, Malkin, those types of players, and I think they're just not going to be able to do it this year. I don't know. Washington's always a team to keep your eye on, which is not shocking to say, but it's always scary to just watch them climb the rankings and just kind of slot right in.
mm-hmm.
Sure. Awesome.
So then,
Well, I mean,
who do you have? All right, so it's either Pittsburgh or Washington in there, and then the other one would get one of the wild card spots. So then you have Islanders, Devils, Blue Jackets, Flyers going for that final wild card spot.
mm-hmm.
Well, they're not the only ones. You still have the Atlantic.
True.
Oh shit! Yeah, I forgot.
Lest we forget, there's a whole another division.
Don't put your eggs all in one basket.
Yeah, considering Boston, Toronto, like Tampa Bay is in that division. The Panthers, pretty stacked division.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we
all right.
Don't forget about Ottawa.
Yeah, oh yeah, we'd be lucky to get a wild card spot out of the Metro.
Yeah,
You're right.
Yeah, that's tough. That's tough.
Yeah.
So do you think we get any wild card spots? I'm not talking the Flyers. I'm talking the Metro. I mean, do you think that the top four teams, or the top, I guess it would be top five teams in the Atlantic, are going to be better than the top four in the Metro? Meaning that like we wouldn't get a wild card spot at all.
I think we get one.
I would say yes.
I would say yes for Atlantic. There's too many powerhouses.
Mhm.
Look what they've done this offseason.
Yeah.
Had Florida just get Matthew Tkachuk. Tampa Bay they're just putting it all back in, saying let's keep going.
Mhm.
Ottawa's going to be scary to watch. They made a lot of sneaky moves.
Mhm.
Toronto, if they can freaking figure it out, they'll be in there. Boston's aging, but I think that they're one of those teams that sneaks in.
Yeah,
I put
back.
them in I put them in the same light as I do Pittsburgh, though.
Right.
Like they're a one line team as far as I'm concerned.
You can
And
almost guarantee
they're trying to make it a 2-line team when they can't.
You can almost guarantee though in the Atlantic it's going to be some variation of Toronto, Florida, and Tampa Bay.
Mm-hmm.
Typically,
Yeah.
I mean that's the status quo. I feel like for the past how many years now, Boston, will grab a top 3 spot here or there, but this year's going to be a bit different. I think.
Yeah,
you've got, and you quote me here in about 9 months. I think Boston has a wild card spot locked up. I think they'll have one of the wild card spots. Ottawa would be for the lack of redundant or for an abundance of redundancy, Ottawa is a wild card, because
They're a dark horse.
Yeah, you could say dark horse. Like it's a variable. Ottawa is a big variable here because if they can put it all together with what they've acquired on the offseason, it's going to be, like you said, Hoagie, it's going to be scary. Like they've got a pretty solid group there. And I think if I remember correctly, I think the big question is going to be their goaltending.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, Ottawa made the moves this year that like I wish that we were able to make.
Yeah, exactly.
Once again, another team surpassing us in the rebuild, whatever type of crap you want to call it.
Holding steady, baby. Holding steady.
We got so we see relief a year from now with JVR gone theoretically.
Yep.
And the cap is supposed to go up next year, so like I think we get some
like
relief.
1 or 2 million.
Woohoo!
So
I don't know. We got one more year, boys, of really tough hockey, and then I think things will start looking up. I don't know how far up it'll go, but I think it'll at least get more exciting. Here's the other thing I did want to mention is that a year ago we did make a lot of moves, and I think we were all legitimately very excited about those moves. It clearly didn't work out for a lot of different reasons. there is something to be said about the lot of people in, a lot of people out kind of mentality that we've seen a couple of these teams do, where like sometimes it just doesn't gel. Like sometimes it just does not fit. And so it's like the difference of, there's a reason why they play the games. There's a reason why they play 82 of them. And it's because the team's got to actually go through, and you never know. And it's, I'd love to sit here and have faith in the Flyers. I don't particularly, but I'm not overly wowed by anyone's offseason besides Ottawa's, quite frankly, who I know we didn't really go in depth on. I'm not really wowed by anyone else's off seasons to the point where it says, wow, this launches them into another stratosphere.
Sure. No, I'm with you there.
I want to say one thing. 5 of these 8 teams pretty much went out and got a guy got a guy or 2 that could automatically slot into their top 6 and make them better.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina with Pacioretty. Gaudreau, we all know that's a lot for Columbus. Andre Palat in New Jersey. Trocheck with New York. And I said Jerome with Washington. Just toss him in there, see how he does. But those 5 teams, they went out and got somebody that can slot right in. They haven't done that in a long time. I mean, you could argue Cam Atkinson, but
that was a player for player. Like, you're essentially switching them out,
Exactly.
Yeah, not to mention even the defensive side of the puck. Like Petrie will be a top 4 defenseman in Pittsburgh. Depending on whether Romanov signs, I mean, is he a top 4 option with the Islanders? Like, all teams in the Metro did something to make them better. The Flyers, quite frankly, did not. And, it's part of the course for where this team really is, because you're going to get better. You're going to be a middling team. You're not going to, have a high draft pick, but you're also not going to make the playoffs. Like, we're back to square one where we're drafting the Morins, the Sanheims, right in the middle of that draft and not doing anything to move forward in one direction or the other. You're just standing pat.
Yeah.
I would argue that we made our defense more solidified given the Ellis situation. And again, I said it last week, if Ellis comes back, I think our defense is pretty freaking good. And that's a nice problem to have. But
sure,
it stinks that we're still
it's a bad problem to have right now.
Right now, it's a terrible problem to have literally the entire roster hinging on one guy's hip. That's tough.
You're banking it on Couturier's back, freaking Hayes' groin. It's tough. I can't.
Right.
I can't wait to dive more into it.
Maybe it all goes in, man. Maybe it all happens for us this year.
Oh boy.
So that's keep praying to whatever God you're praying to.
As you said, Hoagie, hope is a dangerous thing.
Yeah.
So are the drugs that Matt Casey's smoking. No, all right. So, we wrapped up the Metro there. There's going to be a lot of talk coming up about guys thriving or dying, essentially. We're going to trademark that under Tortorella. But before we get to that, Hoagie, would you please grace us with your dad joke of the week?
Absolutely. You guys ready for it?
What? I've been waiting all week for this. Go.
I know you have, Casey. Did you know that King Arthur had a knight afraid to fight? His name was Sir Render.
Oh. Very cunning.
I just died a little bit inside.
I almost missed John's reactions to those. Almost. Almost.
No, it was really good that we actually were able to talk today. That was nice.
Right?
It was kind of nice.
I enjoyed it.
Hoagie's ego isn't totally shot, and it's nice.
Yeah, I can quit the podcast and be happy. Go back downstairs. Dude, even your father-in-law didn't like the dad joke, though.
Oh man.
He's like, why did I ever let this kid marry my daughter?
Sounds about right.
All right. Well, that's it for us here. Matt Casey. Would you like to find no.
Pod 3 Casey on Twitter.
Hoagie.
Give it a like. Give it a follow.
Pod Street host for all of your Flyers chaos currently.
Yeah. Hoagie's a big fan of stirring the pot. You can find me on Twitter at Pod Street Bob. John's on Twitter at Pod Street Gove. The four of us are on Twitter at PodSTBullies. Check out our affiliates, like I had mentioned earlier, with Flyers High and Wide on Twitter at FlyersHW. You can check out the 5 Minute Major podcast as well. They're on Twitter at 5 Min Major Pod. And then aside from that, folks, that's your show for the week. We'll be back next week with some more talk. Until then, have a wonderful week and try not to be too negative.
Bye now.